Howdy, I'm Lauren. I'm really excited to be guiding us all through this webinar today, which has three different parts. So the awesome programs team here at Zapier has prepared some content around how to think about moving something that's in person to online. So shout out to Anna and Grace, who has spent a lot of time putting all this content together for y'all. This also includes some tools you can use to help run these online classes, which also happen to be integrated on Zapier. Isn't that cool? We're going to spend the bulk of our time actually talking to Nora, who is amazing. She's done exactly what we're talking about today, taking these CraftJams and turn them into WebJams. I'm going to ask her a bunch of questions so we can hear all about it. Then we'll also share with you a workflow that Nora uses on Zapier to help her run these WebJams. And then at the end, we're going to do some Q&A and take some of y'all's questions. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to kind of ground y'all in is thinking about why it is you want to move this in-person class online, and what are the things that you specifically want to accomplish with that. So a couple of questions to ask yourself, right? And use what's applicable for y'all, right? Y'all know your business, y'all know what you're doing, so take and pick what feels most applicable. But first, we think it's really important to identify who your target audience is. Who's going to be interested and benefit from taking this class of yours? Next, we recommend thinking about what success looks like. Perhaps you're trying to focus on keeping your clients engaged until in-person classes can start again. Maybe this is a way for you to add new customers, both perhaps. So really define what it is in your mind's eye. Third, oh, excuse me. Think about how you might reach these people and perhaps new ways that you're not used to, right? So foot traffic may not be possible. Web traffic definitely is. I don't know about y'all, but I spend a lot of time online now. So consider how your messaging is going to change because of that. So you might need to take into account things like time zones. Are you going to be offering this in different or specific locations, countries, languages? Even things like privacy policy and GDPR are all things you should be considering when reaching out to this target audience of yours. And then the last question we would recommend posing to yourselves is, what is the ROI you need? What is the return on investment? There might be some new costs associated with either software you need to purchase to make this work. Do you need to raise costs? Can you lower them? Really having a good idea, though, of who that target audience is going to really help guide some of the answers to question number 4. And now I'd like to transition over to maybe some more tactical questions to ask yourself when going to actually plan and run this online class. So the first thing is, think through how you're going to share out this offering that you're put together, because again, we don't necessarily have foot traffic, right? And if you're an in-person business, that's going to really change for you. So you might already have perhaps a website or a social media presence or a giant old list of contacts or emails. If you don't, maybe think about setting what up. If you need to build a website, take into account things like your own technical abilities or comfortability with different tools. Not all tools are created the same. Some are more difficult than others. So pick one that's going to enable you to find success. And just a quick aside, speaking of tools, I'll be dropping in different tools that you could potentially be using through these different sections that I'll be talking through. All of the tools I mention here are able to use on Zapier and build different automated workflows. And also being these like super cool cat software nerds that we are here at Zapier, we write a ton about tools and workflows over on the Zapier blog. So I would definitely recommend checking that out if this is of any interest to you. So next, after you've thought through about how you're going to share it, how are people going to pay for it? If you don't already have or work with a payment processor, we definitely recommend choosing one that is reputable, something that is going to assure you and your customers that you're in good hands. I'd also pose a question to y'all to think about, how does your target audience want to pay for this? Are they people who are comfortable with something like Venmo? Are they needing something a little bit more robust, like a copy of an invoice? Again, rooting in your target audience of who you're trying to reach is going to help make answering all of these questions a lot more easy. And then, of course, some tools that you can use to do this. Next slide, please. Perfect. I mentioned Venmo. I'm guessing most of us here are familiar with PayPal. There's also things like Stripe or Square. So feel free to kind of find the one that works best for you. And I would say that's applicable for almost any tool, right? So next, you're going to want to think about promotion and how people can start registering to attend this class. Most likely, you might do this through email, if not a few other ways, depending upon, again, your target audience. If you have a large audience in specific, using something like MailChimp, right, which is an email software, you can see how often people are opening your emails, clicking on your different links. There are other ways to track engagement online with your target audience. It's also just a good idea to confirm with folks that they've successfully grabbed a spot on your online class or webinar or workshop. But luckily, most of the different tools that we mentioned have this feature built in, so that's really great. Some other tools to consider to promote your class and register folks for it could be Gmail or Sendinblue, all of the big old social media accounts as well. So next is distributing class materials, which again, this might not be applicable for everyone here, definitely applicable for CraftJam, I would guess. So if you happen to use materials, definitely think through how those might change now that you're doing this remotely. Can you ship things to people? Are you able to distribute things digitally? If there's equipment or other things that you need to use, can you recreate that doing a live video demonstration? Luckily, there are a bunch of different things that you can try that allows you to get really creative. Here at Zapier, my team uses Coda a lot. Another favorite of ours that isn't listed is called Mural, which is really great for remote workshops. So there's a whole different suite of tools that you can use to engage and recreate those in-person materials remotely. And then maybe the most important thing, you need a webinar tool, right? You can't run a webinar without a webinar tool. And again, I would pose to you the question of like, what are your needs for these sessions? There are a lot of cool different features, like breakout rooms. If you need to simulate small group discussions or breakout sessions, there are tools that have those features available to you. So again, you need to think through those details of what you need and then find the tool that allows you to do that. So obviously we're all on Zoom together right now, which also allows you to do breakout rooms. We have the chat panel on the side. There are a ton of options, so just find the one that meets your needs. And then lastly, I would recommend touching base with your audience before the webinar happens. This might be someone's first webinar or online class or workshop. Heck, this might even be someone in the audience's first webinar or online workshop. So making sure you're setting those expectations up front with folks is going to really help you kick this off smoothly. It's also going to make sure that your participants feel comfortable and prepared to show up and participate in what they've signed up for. But again, I mean, I'm sure y'all can guess, this depends on your target audience, right? Everyone's different and everyone's trying to accomplish different things. Um, one pro tip I would share with y'all, cool, is doing a practice run. Cannot recommend this enough. We did one as a group for this webinar. I did 3 last night on my own. Running through these things and doing that dry run is going to help you work out different technology kinks, making sure everyone who's hosting the class knows what they're doing. Cannot recommend this enough. And then lastly, I mean, now that you've quote unquote finish this webinar and put on something amazing and you're ready to celebrate and get out the cupcakes and the champagne, you might want to also see how your participants thought about the class you put on. Besides like answering questions for people, which as a researcher is my favorite part of my job, this is probably my most favorite part. I know that's really proper English, because you get to see what people's experiences were like, right? What were some things that you knocked really well out of the park? What are some things that could improve for some people? Perhaps they give you some feedback that on something you hadn't even thought of. So always learning and growing through feedback and iterating on what you do is only going to make this better. And we have a list of form survey tools that you can use to easily do this. My personal favorite is Typeform. We use that a lot here at the research team at Zapier. So with that, I'm gonna introduce Nora. Hi, Nora. I'm so happy you're here. There you are.
I'm very happy I'm very happy you invited me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, of course. So Nora, you've done a lot of cool things. I specifically want to focus in on what you're doing over at CraftJam. Can you tell us a little bit more about CraftJam and what it is y'all do over there?
Yeah, I mean, CraftJam, I started CraftJam about 3 years ago, and the idea was really to bring people together and help them, guide them through making something that they like. Very much beginner focus, and we would teach people in person. We have a little studio that's closed right now in Soho, New York. And so we teach them anything from calligraphy, glass etching, leather wallets, watercoloring. And so we do these individual classes, but also big corporate classes or team engagement events for, you know, up to 1,000 people. And wow. So that's what we've been doing for 3 years until, until COVID-19 happened. And so now we moved everything. I mean, in less than 2 weeks, actually, we moved online and started hosting web jams. That's what we call our webinars.
Wow. Wow, so many questions. I'm curious, can we start off with like talking about how you decided to make this move from CraftJams to WebJams? I think we were talking a little bit about before the start of the webinar, how you foresee this situation lasting a lot longer. And so you needed to come up with something that was a little bit more sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I think I realized beginning of March that this is going to be a serious global problem. And we were one of the first people that closed actually our store, our studio, and canceled all corporate events because I didn't want to be responsible for getting any one of our jam masters, which are our teachers, sick. But at the same time, I just felt that even like, especially now, there's a time where people want to gather even more, where they feel lonely, and crafting is just such a great meditative exercise that helps people. And so, I mean, it was, I didn't even think about it. I was just like, we need to continue to teach. We need to continue to gather. Let's see how we can do this online. And so we, you know, tried and tested, used quite a few tools. One of them, Zapier, which was amazing, and without you guys we couldn't have done it. Really, I'm not just saying that because I'm here. But we have 50 sessions up right now, and to do this manually with a team of 3 people, it's impossible. So so we decided to do that, and then I can get into a bit more the details how we went about it. I mean, you mentioned a few things when you talked about the general terms. I mean, the one very first thing I did actually, I sent out a survey to our existing customers, and I said, okay, this is what we want to do. What would you want to see? Like, what kind of classes would you take? How long should they be? I also asked, which time zone are you in, to schedule that? And do you have any kind of additional comments? And we got a lot of information from that. And then we just put together initial workshops. We focused on the ones that we knew were the most popular anyway, combined with what people ask for and what we thought we can execute fast, because we knew we wanted to be online as quick as possible so we can learn from that. And so, I mean, on the offline, we had almost 60 different kind of workshops, but we decided to launch with 4 different workshops. Wow. And to make sure that, how do we know that the product that we had offline works online? We first need to try that on very few, because what we thought is, it's better to make less better than having a lot that's mediocre. And so we also, part of what CraftJam is, we give you all the supplies that you need. And suddenly people are at home. What do they have at home? So we started to put together kits, but we also decided to design classes with where you could use so-called household items. So, hand lettering. Do you have pencils lying around? Do you have some kind of, colored felt pen, whatever? You can join, right? Embroidery, we tell you in the supplies, well, if you have a sewing kit from a hotel room, you could join, but maybe you want to buy our kit, right? So there's like a way where we wanted to be really inclusive, because we know that the circumstances had changed. And if you want to bring your own supplies, that's fine. This is what we are using. Try to match that. Yeah.
Wow, very cool. I was also going to offer salt. Salt is like the most really flexible tool, I feel like, in crafting for some reason. I'm doing a lot of watercolors, so that's probably it.
Yes.
2 weeks, that's crazy fast. How did y'all pull that off? Any tips you have for people in the audience for doing something like you did?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important tip is really to focus. That's so important. And you have to be Mary Kondo, throw it all out that you don't think is helpful. I mean, right now, I have 4 hours time to work each day because I have a little daughter and we don't have childcare in school anymore. So I really need to condense everything in these 4 hours. I do have a team of 2 people as well. So, I'm not doing this totally alone, but I think focus on what you need and try to delegate and outsource and just kick out the things that are not absolutely essential for your product, for your new product. Don't cry tears after what's been, just look ahead of you. And so, so we just focused, less is more. And then we would just focus on adjusting that. After every workshop, we send out another survey and we ask, how did you like that, right? And so sometimes I follow up with emails. If I don't get a perfect score from somebody, and we're very proud of our NPS, that's right now 83, if that means anything to anyone. But if I don't get the perfect 10, you will get an email from me and I'll ask you, how can we make the 10? And interestingly enough, what we could have done, the complaints were, oh, my microphone didn't work, right? So somebody gave us a bad score. Not really our fault, but maybe it is, because maybe we should have done more hand-holding. I mean, you're only as good as your worst tech, right? So now we added 10-minute log-on period before each workshop, so we can do some hand-holding with people who are not as tech savvy. And it's been worth gold, really. Somebody else gave us a bad score because they're in Ireland and the time zone doesn't work for them. So, I mean, we can't now cater to all the new time zones we had. And it's so beautiful because, we were focused on New York, and suddenly I go attend WebJams, and we have Mexico, we have Australia, Ireland, Germany. And so there's all these new opportunities. So it's also beautiful to go into something that's new, right? But like, find out what can make you better. Maybe somebody isn't happy with the kit you sent. And then the goal is to change people's mind. If they weren't happy, our main goal is to make them happy. And we need to ask them, what can we do to do that? And be quick. I mean, quick. That's like super important.
Okay. So I want to touch on that, being quick and doing this really fast. Like, what were some things that allowed you to, one, you mentioned creating focus is really important. You only have half a day now because you're taking care of your daughter. How were you able to create that focus and do this quickly?
Yeah. I mean, so we have extreme tight priority list with, like, we have our goals, and then we set our tasks, and then we measure everything we do in order to manage it. Like, if you don't measure, you can't manage, right? So we're trying to, so what works, what doesn't work, we either change it or we throw it out. We're not crying after it, right? And so, and of course, trust your team. And I'm very lucky to have amazing people that stepped up and that are doing all these things that they hadn't needn't do before, right? So I think that, but I also, like, as a leader, you really have to make sure that you listen to your team also, and that you ask them, what feels right, what feels good, what works with the customer. I mean, there's so many elements, but in the end, I think it's measure, and then make decisions. What works, go for it. What doesn't work, cut it off.
So how are y'all measuring and making those decisions at CraftJam? Are you using a tool? Are you monitoring something? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we use Eventbrite for tickets, right? So we know already, people who sign up. We send out MailChimp. Our newsletter is MailChimp. So we see how many people are opening it, how many are people reacting, clicking through things. SurveyMonkey, we have specific kind of questions related to, you can give scores. Would you recommend this to a friend? That's the NPS, from 1 to 10. Or how did you like your teacher? Excellent, very good, fair, poor, same with the kids. So we're looking at all these every day. It's the first thing I do in the morning. I look at these points. I mean, the other things is also, in order to be quicker and faster, we use When I Work for scheduling the shifts for the teachers. Obviously, most important, Zapier, who's helping us to schedule several events with Eventbrite, and then we get the unique Zoom code. Actually, sorry, not we, but the unique Zoom code for the registrant that pays for it. They get it sent, because we don't want to just send out a link for an open meeting. We need to make money, so we need to sell tickets, but we also need to have these unique codes, and we couldn't do it manually, right? Like, you can, for like hundreds or for thousands of people, you can't generate these codes. So this is like, if Zapier wouldn't be there, I wouldn't sleep anymore, right? I would work around the clock. So, and we use Google Drive, for example. We had these class handouts that we used to give in the IRL classes, worksheets for calligraphy, handling stitch guides, knotting guides for macrame. And so what I do now is I upload it on my Google Drive, and I have the preview version of the PDF doc, and then I open the link so that anyone can view it. And we put that link into the email that people get when they sign up for the class. So it's not on our website. It might not look as pretty, but it works. Like, like right now for us, it's like whatever works for tools and tech. And then when we're inside the WebJam, we come out with our hospitality and with our welcoming, and we're trying to translate the experience of offline into online. And their personality is the most important. So you want to lead up to everything with the right tech, with the right tools. And then once you have the gathering and you come together, you need to remember your hosting skills, right? And for us, quality and hospitality are the two most important elements. So quality of materials that we give to you, the worksheets you download, the kits we send to you. And also the video chat we're using. I mean, we are very happy with Zoom. I'm sure there's a million other things, but we made Zoom work for us. And we had to do a little bit of a hack, I would say, for Zoom too. So we wanted to have that participatory, our classes. So we didn't, but at the same time, we had to have a teacher at a pedestal in a way. And we use 2 screens because we want people to see the person that's talking, because we think that's better for connecting with the audience. But at the same time, we also want to see the hands, a close-up, what people are actually making. So now we have our teachers log in with 2 devices. One, we send them a mobile arm, like $20 on Amazon or whatever independent retailer you can find. And so they log on with their phone and their desktop. They mute the audio on one of them. And so you see the hands, and we pin the hands as the spotlight in the webinar, if that makes sense. And we make all the audience, we have small groups. So we use webinar, but we make our audience a panelist. So they can actually, participate, and we see their video. Like right now with the webinar, I mean, we have so many people, it would be too much, but we have, 20, 30 people in our WebJams. And so I want to see you. I want to interact with you. I want to see your face. I want to see, are you happy or not? So we elevate you to a panelist. Yeah, so.
And that's a specific feature in Zoom that we're actually using right now. So all of y'all on the call, we can't see you, but you can see us because we're logged in as panelists. So it sounds like, Nora, you have people who participate log in as panelists as well. So then it's kind of like a discussion. Okay. You mentioned something earlier that I think is really interesting, which is you're only as good as your worst tech. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, if there's friction and something doesn't work for people, it gets them not only frustrated, but often embarrassed. And so not everyone is tech savvy, and just, not everybody uses, tech in their daily lives, but you want to make sure that they're included too. So in order for them to get a good experience, you have to over communicate and to handle, because if there's this friction, and especially if there's this embarrassment, because we don't like to admit if we can't use tech properly. It makes us look old. It makes us, seem outdated. So we do that ahead of the workshop, so you feel confident, because we know from our measuring that people who had a problem with their tech, they had a bad experience. And that's what will define you as a brand too, even if it's out of your hand, like if your microphone works or not, but I can help you get there.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Even I work in tech, and I'm online every day, but when I have to share my screen, I always say, like, I hate watching people me computer, because as soon as someone starts watching me use it, I feel totally embarrassed, exactly like you were talking about, and like kind of under a microscope. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
You've put that out for folks. How about, you've talked about, I think you called them jam masters, craft masters?
Yeah, jam masters are our teachers. Mm-hmm.
I would love to know, how did you prepare or work with and train your staff to do something that's been so tactile and in person, and recreate that online? What was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, like what you said too, testing. And we first did it internally and in the team, and it took many hours to figure out what's the best tech setup, what's the best timing. I mean, probably several days, and I'm happy, by the way, to share that in detail. I think in the end, we're sending out some URLs where, I'm happy to share how we did that in the end exactly. But what we have is very detailed run of shows and an operational manual. So we go through step by step, not only how the tech works and how you set up the tech, but also how you should run the workshop. So, like 10 minutes before log on. If it's a big group, don't have everyone introduce themselves, do it throughout the class or in the end, because if everybody introduces themselves and you have 20, 30 people, it takes takes half an hour, and it's frustrating because people want to start crafting, you know? And so when do you do what? If you're only 5 people, that's fine. And also having different questions that you ask people to make them feel welcome and comfortable. Offline, we would say, oh, introduce yourself, your name, and use an adjective that matches your name, and, you know, what's the last thing you made, and I don't know what. But that's, you know, you have your name on your computer, like on your, you know, it's like in your video screen. So that's not so important. You can say it, but you don't need to memorize it or others. So we think it's much more important to say, you know, where are you from, where you're based, because then you have people that say Mexico City, etc. So what kind of questions can you use for icebreakers to make people feel comfortable, and when? And so we have very detailed workflows for that. And then we do dry runs with our jam masters, you know, to make sure they're comfortable with the tech and they're comfortable with the workflow. And then we also try to attend the first WebJam just to make sure that, you know, they feel good about it and comfortable. And many of them, we have a Slack channel now where the WebJam masters, you know, exchange tips and tricks. And we also ask them to send us feedback. So they get a survey after each class, and then we try to incorporate it. And so there's this constant like encouragement, feedback, best practices are really important. And so we have these documents with the run of show, the operational manual, and the best practices that we ask our teachers to study and to execute on.
So that's the operation manual that you've documented in detail for everyone. Gotcha. You've talked a lot about, so we've talked about you're only as good as your worst tech and all these different tools that are helping you do these things. I'm curious about the process for you to choose a tool. Like, were you were talking about different like technical abilities, right? And comfortability. What was the process like for finding the right tools that worked for you and your staff and your participants?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a combination. I mean, some tools we've used already, so we didn't want to just do something new, because even if there's something better around, we know we don't have to waste time learning how it works, like MailChimp, SurveyMonkey, all these things we've used forever. When it came to the video chat, you know, I just asked friends, I posted on Facebook, what do you think we should do for this? And so, and then other things, you know, I try to read, you know, a bit of, you know, what's going on in the tech sphere, etc. And actually, Eventbrite that we've used before for our offline tickets, they had a really helpful article on their blog talking about connecting Eventbrite to Zoom, and that's how Zapier got in. And I read that and I was like, oh, let's try this. And we tried it and it worked so well. So that was how we found that. And so it's really, you know, listening to friends, reading up on it, and using what we had. It's a whole mash. And then we, you know, now we have 13 different tools that we use every day, you know, to, yeah. I mean, I also listed them at our on our webpage, the link that we're sending out later. So it's all there. I also came up with the 10 commandments for moving quickly from offline to online, which I've been sharing with you here, but I've listed it all up. So I'm happy to share that all and answer more questions.
Okay, great. Yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit and ask like some more like very practical questions. Like, how did you deal with, or how do you deal with no-shows or cancellations?
Yeah, so we have very few cancellations, but we just reschedule or refund. So very casual about that. I mean, we know things happen, especially now. Like we want you to be happy and to enable you to get that. And we don't want to fret over a ticket, you know, like we'd rather have you come back and tell people how easy we made it to reschedule and to refund you than like querying with you. So, so that's one thing. No-shows don't really happen that much, but if there's a no-show, you know, like it happened to us in the offline, few times, and then we always try to accommodate people, you know. I mean, like I said, in the end we want you to be happy, because that's what we're here for. And also a happy customer will tell other customers too. So you never win, fighting over reimbursement, I think.
I suspect that having happy customers or happy people is in one of your 10 commandments. Am I?
Yeah.
Okay. You seem to be mentioning that a lot, which I absolutely love. That sounds like it's a really core part about how you operate and run your business, which is really cool.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. What's been some of the most surprising things that's happened to you during this process?
Most of the, actually, I mean, one surprising thing, how international we suddenly became, and just the weird ways how people would find out about us. We were so local. And so somebody took a class because they heard it from their daughter, and then they made a podcast about it, and somebody else heard about that podcast, like listened to it, that podcast. And then somebody, I guess Eventbrite now is posting online offerings. So there was a graphic designer in Bristol. I mean, this was just so surprising and fun how international it became. And then I was really surprised how many people order our kits. I mean, that was, I don't think we're like super price competitive about it. I mean, we curate it nicely, but we do like to have good quality, and we don't buy in mass bulk, so we can't give like this amazing great price. Mm-hmm. But people want to support us. I mean, and that's what they often say, we want to support you. And so that was really surprising how many kits we sold.
Wow. And were kits something you were selling pre-global pandemic, or is that something new that you put together with these online classes?
We were having a few kits, but we didn't really focus on that. And I didn't want to focus on it because I didn't want it to be I didn't want to distract from working on the core experience of the hospitality. Mm-hmm. And I felt it's like a whole other ball game, the logistics, and it is. But now we have to do it. And we're doing it from our bedrooms and closets. And I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that we don't have to do anymore, like schlepping boxes around, from Brooklyn to Manhattan. Mm-hmm. But I think that was really surprising that people want to buy that,
Mm-hmm. What's been your favorite part about doing these online classes?
It's going to sound so cheesy, but I just love them when people are happy. It's really, you really feel, and people write us. They're like, thank you so much for doing that. We really need this. Please continue. I'm telling people, I'm telling my friends, I'm going to attend more. It's just, I mean, I know as a lifelong crafter, I know how good it feels to make something and mm-hmm. to be having this meditative in the zone moment. And then in the end, you finish with a project that's yours and that's personal. Mm-hmm. And to give that away, to like pay that forward, like what I had my entire life, and to see that people get that, and that you can, I mean, it's the product that we built in this company, right? Like we built this from scratch. Mm-hmm. And people use it and they pay for it, and it makes them happy. It's awesome. Just, yeah.
Last question here for you, Nora, before we wrap up and head over to our Q&A. You've been talking about how Zapier has been able to help you save time. You're only a staff of you plus 2 others. I'm curious, like, how Zapier is helping you running these classes and why that's important for you.
I mean, what's important for me is we don't have to worry about it. I mean, like we now scheduled 50 different workshops where everybody needs a unique code that attends this class, right? Mm-hmm. And those are hundreds and hundreds of people, hopefully, tens of thousands one day. And we couldn't do that without Zapier. So that's one thing. The other thing is we also, specifically with our newsletter, we make sure that when people sign up, that they right away on our website, that they right away get our newsletter. That's really important too. So these like automation of manual tasks that would take so much of our time, where we can build something new. So like the whole idea of running and maintaining things, that's been really, I mean, absolutely invaluable. And I'm so excited to use it more. I mean, I've been digging in, and I'm thinking there's so many more things that can help us when we get certain requests, that we right away, you know, get alerted to them. And for me as a builder, as a maker, it's just so exciting, because I love tools, and I love good tools that work. And so to have a digital tool where you can be creative, it's like the glue that puts things together, right? Like you have all these different parts. You have your MailChimp, you have your email, you have your Google Drive, you know, you have your When I Work, and then you zap the zaps in there, and then you have this beautiful sculpture. And it's just, it's and like, and I'm not getting paid for this, everyone. Okay, so I really mean it. You can quote me on that. So it's really it's been yeah, it's like any artist, any builder's dream, and it's so easy. Like you don't have to have that tech knowledge, right? Like you don't need to code, you don't need to you know, you don't need to learn anything extra. You go through the instructions, you do it, and boom.
I love how expressive and artful that explanation was. That was delightful. We actually have an example of a Zapper, a workflow that you've been using with Zapier, Nora. Let's pull that up on the screen. Awesome. Thanks, Anna. There we go. So this one in particular is where you have participants that when they register for your event, they get added to a specific mailing list in MailChimp, and then they're sent out a specific unique Zoom.
Yeah.
This was what you were talking about earlier. Is that correct?
Yeah. Cool. Correct. Yeah.
You mentioned that you couldn't have done this without Zapier. Like, what is, for those that aren't really necessarily familiar, like what is this Zap specifically doing for you and your business?
I mean, I think it's what it says there, right? Like it adds somebody that signed up to the mailing list. So I don't have to go into Eventbrite, copy paste the email, copy the email and then paste it into MailChimp. And then I don't have to go to Zoom, make a special unique code and send that out. I can sleep when that happens. And that's beautiful. And maybe people from Zapier can express that a bit better than I can.
No, I love how you did that. Awesome. Well, Nora, thank you. This was such a delight. I've just got one more quick slide or two before we turn it over to the audience to ask you some more delightful questions. So for all y'all in the audience, just again, if you're planning to get started with something like this, as Nora said, right, the most important thing for her was focusing and creating that delightful experience for your audience. Identify what that minimal viable service is that they need, and then build it, create it. Keep it simple. Sounds like, Nora, you went from 60 to 4. That sounds like you're keeping it.
Yeah, but actually we're up to now, I think we are we have 15 different ones now. So we also we start with 4, but now we're going back up again.
Gotcha. And I just want to leave y'all with this quote about digital transformation. So from Jeff Cubitt, companies that invest more in digital transformation actually outperform their peers over time. These companies are more prepared for disruption, like a global pandemic. They're better able to monetize new digital channels and better able to build a bigger user base. What's more, this phenomenon exists regardless of industry. So this is applicable for all different types of businesses and services. So just a few quick housekeeping things before we start that Q&A. If you're interested in any of the tools we mentioned today, check out Zapier's app directory, which again, we'll link out at the end of this. You can play around with different categories and see top apps in each of those. We also have a video to help y'all create your first app. And we have tons and tons of different Zap templates that you can use on Zapier. We'll include all of these links as well. Of course, please visit craftjam.co and take one of Nora's amazing classes. They sound super fun, delightful. I think I'm going to do one myself. And then lastly, something really cool and special too, if this wasn't enough, Priya Parker, who is the author of The Art of Gathering, and a New York Times podcaster, is offering a unique offer to y'all who are attending this webinar to give you mentoring around moving online. We're going to have a special link for you to access this in a follow-up email. And I believe you have something like this on your website as well too, Nora, for people to check out.
Yeah, so we have on craftjam.co-Zapier, we have a little form you can fill out if you want more information from us, if you have additional comments. My 10 commandments are there, and especially if you want to join Priya's podcast, you just tick a box and we'll send it to her. So it's craftjam.co, and then -Zapier.
Perfect. Awesome. Katie, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you both. That was amazing. And before we hit it over to questions, I just want to remind you all that we did record this, so we'll be sending that out once you exit. And you'll also see a survey once you exit this webinar, and we would love your feedback on it to see if we can add anything new to our future webinars. Just let us know what you'd like to see. Okay, so let's kick it to the questions. Okay, so this first question I kind of combined two together. It's probably a good one for Nora. So Nora, what do you find works best in terms of session lengths? Do you typically do a full day? And do you have any info also on the best time that you like to conduct these?
So session length for us right now is between an hour and a half per session. And if we had workshops that were longer, we split them up, but we also condensed a lot. So our regular session offline was around 2 hours. And so we condensed that to an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. We would have boot camps sometimes that would be 4 or 5 hours. And we now condense them into 2 sessions and each an hour, hour and a half. The timing that works best as of now, because most of our most of our customers are still on the East Coast time. So we do a lot in the evenings, 6:30ish. And that's, we found out through our survey, and people then also confirmed that in our other follow-up service. And weekends. Weekends are super, super popular. And so we schedule throughout all day on weekends. So we right now do between 1 and 4 sessions a day. And so the international ones, they're mostly also joining the weekends.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Another question here is, I also combined another couple. So as a business owner, are you able to manage all of your Zaps by yourself, or do you have an expert who wires everything? And what was kind of your learning process with learning Zapier?
So we manage it in-house. The implementations were done by my colleague Anna, who read through the instructions and the initial Zaps way back when I had set up myself, but this time Anna set them up, and she actually made an outline of what she did, especially for multiple events. So you're welcome to have that outline, which is in that, on our site, that link that I said earlier. So you can do it totally as a business owner. I mean, Anna doesn't have a technical background. I call her our CTO because she's been managing our Squarespace website, but we use all tools that we use, and including Zapier, as non-technical people. So no outside help needed.
Okay, that's great to know. So another question kind of about the presentation. Do you usually have a support team online to manage the chat or slide advances? And how do you juggle everything when it's live?
So we have relatively small groups. So we kept them small on purpose. We don't want to have more than 25 or 30 people in one WebJam. And because we have people as panelists, where you can see them and they can ask questions. It's almost like being in a class. So there's less on the chat. Mostly the feedback is right there. And we have we put a lot of effort into using the kind of techniques and explaining them in a way that any beginner can understand them. So on the one hand, it's very easy to follow step by step. Most of it is not slides, actually. It's like seeing your hands making things. So if you have slides, I guess just be very clear in explaining them. And then we usually have feedback right away, questions right away. And so that way, actually, our Jam Masters can manage it. I can imagine it's different for different businesses, but for us, that works.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And I know that you mentioned the platforms that you use for the trainings, and I think Lauren also mentioned some other versions, but do you guys mind reiterating what you use and what other options there are?
Reiterating which, for all the tools that we're using, or for the video platforms? For
the video platform.
Oh, I think that's more Lauren, because we're using Zoom exclusively. So, I know others, but maybe Lauren, you want to respond to that?
So I use Zoom as well, but you're able to do different things within Zoom. So I'll use other software that I will share my screen or share a link out so people can be following me in a different piece of software and doing the activity. But Zoom is the method for us to see each other's faces and actually have discussion around what we're doing. So we'll often do a lot of screen sharing with Zoom and use different tools like Mural, which is one of my favorite tools ever. It's like a virtual whiteboard with Post-it notes. If anyone knows about UX design, it's like the Bible for us UX designers, Post-it notes. There's also fun tools like Excalidraw, where you can all draw in real time on the internet together. Lots of cool things you can use.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Love it. Okay. Another question maybe for Nora. Can you explain how you share documents and templates for your workshops?
Yeah, so we use Google Drive, and I upload a PDF to Google Drive, and then I open the PDF in preview. So you just double click on the PDF, and then right away, it kind of like hovers over a black background. And then you go to the options of sharing. And the sharing, what you do is you go to the advanced setting, and then you say, anyone with this link can see it. So you don't have to log in or get special permission. And that link that you then copy, we send it out in the email for the registrant. You want to double check that this works with somebody who's not part of your system. I usually send them to my mother and say, hey, can you see this? Can you download and print it? Just to be 100% sure that it works.
That's great. And that kind of leads me into my next question, which is, someone asked, they love the idea of inviting less tech-savvy folks on early for hand-holding. How do you communicate that, and how do you actually hold their hand once they've joined the meeting?
Yeah, so we put a paragraph of like an early invite into every email that you get once you sign up for a ticket. So one of the automated emails, and it says, please log in 10 minutes before. We want to make sure your tech is okay. And then we ask our Jam Masters, our teachers, to also be there early, 15 minutes before. And we ask them specifically, please ask people, can you hear me? Let me see if I can hear you. This is how you mute. This is how you unmute. Here's the chat. They really point it out to you. And if they can't get somebody onboarded, they tell them, listen, why don't you reschedule or get a refund? You're not going to have the right experience if you can, if your tech doesn't work right now.
Okay, that's great. And okay, this is kind of a marketing focused question. So how do you reach audiences online? I see many small businesses offer a lot of free classes, and it is difficult to compete. Are there types of campaigns and structures that work for you?
We haven't done marketing in the proper sense yet. We're just starting with it now. For us, what we said is we want to first build a great product that then travels, as word of mouth. So let's make sure that people love what we do, and so they tell others. And once we have that, we already noticed that because we know this is, we build a high quality product that we tested. So I think that's your number one step for like setting up successful marketing. And the second step, what we did, of course, is, sending out newsletters of email addresses that we had already, putting it in social media. We don't do any paid advertising. I hear Facebook is super cheap right now because so much advertising is breaking back. I hear you get the most for your buck at YouTube. That works the best, whatever, but I'm not an expert. But then also collaborations, right? Anna, we got an email from Anna from Zapier on our hello. And I was like, any person that's interested in us, I'm going to talk to them. And so now this is going on, and there's like all these people who, hear about us. And the other thing is really seeking out collaborations, doing something together. We have one free offering. I need to make money. I'm not a venture-backed business. I need to have revenue. So I had, I said, I want to build a product where people are paying for. However, I also am aware that some people right now, they don't have the funds. There's a lot of people who are, are struggling. So we have a craft circle that's for free, and that also spreads the word. So that's what we're doing right now for marketing, but I'm not really the best person at this point to ask about that.
Okay, great. So it looks like we just have time for one more question. And this is just, if we'd like to ask Nora more questions of her work with her Jam Masters, how can we connect with her?
Yeah, so one thing is that you can go to our website, craftjam.co.co, and then -Zapier. There's a form you can fill out with more questions. Feel also free just to email me, nora@craftjam.co, also works. Yeah, happy to tell you more. But the form is a bit easier for us, so we can manage it better.
Okay, great. I'm actually going to link this right now into the chat. So if you want to just click on there to ask any of your questions, feel free to do so. And we will be sending out a recording within the next few days. So look out for that. And I just want to thank you, Nora and Lauren, so much for a really informative presentation. I appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Happy Friday. See you all later.
Bye, y'all.